You know, there is execution and there is planning, and the two are very, very different. When we talk about the tax code, most people talk about the execution or the reporting of the numbers on a year-in, year-out basis. What we're going to talk about on this show is the annual planning. What can I do in January, February, and March to best control what's going to happen next year on my federal 1040? Join us on Consider This program today, and we'll break down the difference for you between tax planning and tax reporting. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Dean Huddleson.
Happy to have you along, Dean. He's our senior advisor up in the Lafayette office, right up there with good old Purdue University. Dean, we say that annual tax planning can make a big difference, but when I say annual tax planning, sometimes people give me this look, like, what does that mean? So what is annual tax planning?
It's not annual tax reporting, which is what you do with your CPA or whoever files your taxes. Simply telling the story of what happened to you in the previous year. Tax planning takes that step away where you're actually being proactive in your planning as far as what have done? Have you done conversions throughout the year? Are you trying to lower your marginal tax bracket as much as you can, all by December 31st of that year?
Cool. By what date? December
31st.
There you go. And that's a key. I want you to file that away in your head if you're listening to the show, right? That's kind of like the end of the ball game, right? So as my buddy Ed Slott, I've been with Ed's group, IRAhelp.com. Ed's got a group called the Master Elite IRA Advisors. I was one of the founding members on the board for over 10 years. And believe it or not, yes, I do sign up willingly to go for 3 days to sit with 330 CPAs, tax attorneys, and other financial geeks like me, where we do nothing but study the tax code in terms of what is going on, what we think will go on, how we can best position your money in terms of what's happening right now and inside of the process. So tax planning are things that you can do proactively, whereas tax reporting are the things that you do reactively, right? You do them because you have to. And so there's some key dates, if you're not familiar with the tax code, that you need to be aware of. April 15th is when you have to pay your taxes on a typical year, April 15th of the year following the year. So December 31st is the cutoff. There's only a few things that you can do after January 1st of the following year that can impact the prior year. Some IRA contributions, things like that, but they're very, very minimal. Charitable gifting, all of that, the majority of stuff has to be done by December 31st. That proactive planning has to take place. October 15th is when you actually have to have your taxes filed on a normal year. So there's a difference between paying and having it filed. That's when you hear somebody talk about an extension. That's what it means. They're going to wait till later. They're going to wait till after April 15th in order to pay the taxes. Now, 2020 and 2021 both had weird years when we were able to pay into the federal government at a later period of time. But those dates really, really do matter, and you need to understand the difference. So reporting is very reactive to what's happened already. You can't change the story. Proactive is the planning that you do prior to. So some people will say, Joe, I've already got a CPA. I've already got somebody looking at taxes, and I'm about to make a confession here, so just forgive me. I've already got a CPA. Why should I worry about tax planning? Why should I hire you to do tax planning? What do you know about tax planning?
Your CPA doesn't do tax planning. He does reporting.
And see, so the CPA doesn't like to hear that. That's number one,
that's
right?
True.
And I've got CPA partners, so I can tell you they don't like to hear that. And the second is you've already hired a CPA, and you think they've got it taken care of, right? So here's the confession for Dear Abby or whomever I would send. I'm not a newspaper guy,
Dear
so
Abby.
Whoever I would send my confession to, the story would go something like this. I managed money by sending it to other advisors, going into this cute little thing called the tech wreck. And I watched people that were quote unquote money managers make some of the biggest mistakes that I'd ever seen made in my entire life. Took advantage of people that I represented, some of my money, and other people's money, and just made really, really bad decisions that I thought was purely out of arrogance and lack of understanding of what was going on. And so from 2001 all the way through 2008, all I did was talk to people about asset management, how money should be invested, demographics, the things that mattered most to me that were on my mind. Now, Dean, very similar to where we talked about early on, you would hurt a soul if you had to, right? And I wouldn't hurt anybody intentionally either. But the bottom line is people hired me, knew that I was a certified financial planner, right? Some of these conversations like tax planning are already bad enough, right? They're already, that people don't want to have those conversations. They think I'm a weird geek because I do, right? I enjoy playing chess with the IRS, right? You don't break rules. You don't have to break rules. Just understand there's two codes, one for the informed and one for the uninformed. You want to be the one that's informed, right? And then you want to take practical use by it. But here I am as a CFP. I know all of these things that I'm talking about, but I spent 8 years of my life where you paid me to be a CFP, but didn't get any of the fruits of that labor, right? So you would go home and sleep comfortably at night that all of your other stuff was in order. And I think that is the way, and I liken that to what's happening when you have a really good CPA. We've got Huth Thompson up in Lafayette, Mike Layer in Indianapolis, Michelle Skeen in here in Anderson, part of E-Step Doctrine Company, Ben Smith, Brian Cox, over in Muncie. We've got really, really smart CPAs that we're able to work with. And that didn't even talk about Brett Spangler, who's on our own team, right? We've got some of the best minds that are out there. But the bottom line is people don't think about calling them to do the tax planning. When people make charitable gifts, they don't necessarily think, I wonder which bucket of money is best for this to come from, right? We've gone into big churches and talked about qualified charitable distributions 2 years ago. They'd never even heard the word. Right? And how is that even possible? So anyhow, I'll leave that alone. Let's get to another concept that's called the sunset provision. And just to wrap that up, I know I got to cross the board there. Here's the point. Just because you have a CPA, just because a CPA understands tax planning, doesn't mean their system and their process is set up to help you engage in appropriate tax planning. Right? It's just the nature. It's not that they're not capable, not that they can't. It's just most people don't pick up a phone and call a CPA to say, hey, will you bill me more money to give me an idea about how to do this? Unless you're selling a business, it tends to be a very reactive process. It's the definition of insanity. You get the tax return, you look at the CPA and you go, seriously? You sign it, you write a check, you throw it in a drawer, and you repeat and do it again the next year. We want to stop you from doing that. So that's why we collaborate with your CPA to bring them into the tax planning system. So that we're all working together, and we have the processes and the team and Army to be able to do that. They've got the team in the Army to be able to do the reporting. Something that's coming up that is very concerning for those of us that pay attention to what's going on is what's called a sunset provision. So first of all, Dean, what is the difference between permanent and a sunset?
Permanent means the tax code or whatever law you're talking about is in place until another administration changes it. A sunsetting tax code, in this case, runs for a number of years, and without any new regulation, it will end. For instance, 2018 began our new tax years where we started seeing brackets go from 10, 15, and 22 on the low end to 10, 22, or 10, 12, and 22. We live under that tax code now until December 31st of 2025. If nothing happens between now and then, we will revert back to the old tax code.
Right. So permanent means you have to vote to change it.
Correct.
Sunset means you have to sit around and actually vote to keep it. Right. And so, we get asked a lot of questions. Believe me, when I go to Kansas, here in a month or so, to sit down with the Ed Slott guys, there'll be a lot of conversation over, what the Biden proposals are, what they mean, things that we need to put into play. I will tell you, I intentionally try to stay out of those conversations. I think there's enough. I don't want to say leeway, and people take that negatively, but I think there's enough opportunity in the tax code for most people when they come in and we're able to sit down with all of their stuff in front of us. I think there's enough things that are already known elements that we can move you in a positive direction from a tax planning standpoint without having to try to forecast what may or may not occur. And I will just remind you, as I do my planning team all the time, if you want to see something fun, you can't be a part of it, but I call it the Brady Bunch. We have the planning team, on all of our Zoom spots because we got offices all over the place. And on that screen, you got a CPA, a CFA, a CFP. Usually you have a couple other credentials that are running around. And we'll talk about things that are abnormal, that many people would say, Joe, you're in the wealth management business. You get paid to manage money. And that's absolutely correct. But 80% of our time is dealing with the Brady Bunch, where we're working with the planning team, figuring out how to make life better. We just had a family that's got a grandbaby. Congratulations, that's coming. They were going to put money into a 529 plan. We don't do those in our office just because it makes no sense. You should always go direct to College Choice to do that. But they find out they're going to use the GI Bill on the kid, right? So now there's no reason to do the 529, right? So we were able to do the research, help give them some ideas and some solutions. Has nothing to do with investment management, right? When I sit down with the people we talked about earlier, where we helped them do the Roth conversions, me doing Roth conversions actually reduced the amount of money that we were able to manage because they had to pay taxes. Right. And so when you say, Joe, you talk a lot about Roth conversions and I don't hear that other places. Why is that? Well, you've got to understand the vested interest that Wall Street has in you not spending. So they will encourage you in many cases to take Social Security early. They will encourage you to work longer. They will encourage you to do things that are not always in your best interest. And that doesn't make us holier than thou. It just makes us a little bit different. I want you to understand the process and have a good thought system behind what's going on. And one of the best for you, one of the best things that I can do in your life, that Dean can, or that my team can do, is to help you with that tax planning, to understand where you are on the financial journey. It is the return itself is a one-hit wonder. Your financial journey is many years cumulative, right? It's many years. We've got to make sure each year we play that guitar as well as we can play it with that one-hit wonder. That's all I got to say about that. But I will tell you, go to yourlifeafterwork.com or call 800-928-4001. Get signed up for your Next Steps meeting. We really look forward to meeting you. We will give you things you want to consider today, into your future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you. And we put it in writing.